Palmetto primary. I'm Michael Smerconish in Philadelphia. Voting is underway now in South Carolina. Unless all the polls are wrong, Donald Trump will score a big victory over Nikki Haley and move one step closer to securing the GOP nomination. This despite facing 4 criminal indictments and personal financial peril. On Friday, a New York State judge finalized a $355 million judgment against Trump and triggered a countdown for when Trump must put up cash or post bond to cover that amount, plus the roughly $100 million in interest that he was ordered to pay. That's a huge sum, no matter what Trump's net worth might be, and it doesn't include the combined $88 million that he owes E. Jean Carroll after twice losing civil trials to her. You would think the combination of potential jail and financial collapse for the Republican candidate would build confidence among his Democratic detractors and independent never-Trumpers. And instead, the opposite is true. The political question on the minds of many is about his opponent, President Joe Biden. Is Biden the only Democrat who can beat Trump? Or is Biden the only Democrat Trump can beat? One thing is for sure, there's no way Biden's minimalist mode of campaigning, that which might have been appropriate amidst a pandemic in 2020, is going to escape scrutiny in 2024. An incumbent trailing in the national and battleground polls with an approval rating that on Friday Gallup reported is only 38%, needs to pursue every opportunity to turn the tide. Instead, this president turned down television time in an election year preceding the Super Bowl, the most watched event ever. And many noticed, among them Democratic strategist James Carville, who told me here that it was a sign. And Carville has company. Veteran political analyst Jeff Greenfield recently advised in Politico that, quote, Biden will have to take the path he has avoided so far and engage with voters and with the press, fully embracing the risks of further slips. The New York Times recently ran an editorial saying Biden must do better, adding, quote, he has had less substantive, unscripted interaction with the public and the press than any other president in recent memory. In fact, since becoming president, Biden has done just 86 interviews. At this point in his predecessor's presidencies, Trump had given 300, Barack Obama 422. Although he'll deliver the State of the Union address on March 7, that's going to be with a teleprompter. Democratic Congressman Benny Thompson, who chaired the Select Committee on January 6, quoted in roll call as saying, those of us who helped Joe Biden get elected president are not real comfortable at this point with what we're seeing. Democratic former House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer, quote, we all have concerns. We want to make sure it's a victorious campaign. Ezra Klein, New York Times columnist, political analyst, recently asserted this on his podcast.
I think Biden, as painful as this is, should find his way to stepping down as a hero. That the party should help him find his way to that, to being the thing that he said he would be in 2020, the bridge to the next generation of Democrats. And then I think Democrats should meet in August at the convention to do what political parties have done at conventions so many times before. Organize victory.
Then Nate Silver of 538 posted this on his blog. Personally, I crossed the Rubicon in November, concluding that Biden should stand down if he wasn't going to be able to run a normal re-election campaign, meaning things like conduct a Super Bowl interview. Yes, it's a huge risk, and yes, Biden can still win. Silver proposed Biden do 4 lengthy sit-down interviews with non-friendly sources and make public a complete recording of those interviews. He says that Biden and his inner circle have to make sure he's really up for a second term and is the best option for Democrats. Quote, if Biden was willing to take 5 hours to speak with special counsel Robert Hur, he ought to take 5 hours for this. And if he can't, it's awfully audacious to ask Americans to make him president for another 4 years. Instead, this week, we got a report from Axios that in closed-door fundraisers, the president has been calling on pre-screened donors and then relying on note cards with bullet points to provide answers. As Axios puts it, the system is in place, quote, to help explain his own positions on questions he knows are coming. And instead of availing himself of long-form interviews to put forth his second-term agenda or holding long press conferences, the president has been communicating via brief TikToks, choppy Twitter videos, and brief press scrums. The campaign says it's just keeping up with the times, but many wonder if he's going to avoid debates down the road. Biden supporters have also been quick to counter with Trump's many gaffes and relatively light campaign schedule. But according to a Quinnipiac University poll that was released on Wednesday, more than two-thirds of voters think that Biden is too old to effectively serve another term. When asked whether Trump is too old, 41% said yes. Needless to say, the administration is not happy with this stuff being said out loud and often. The New York Times publisher A.G. Sulzberger recently said Biden is, quote, a historically unpopular incumbent and the oldest man to ever hold this office. We've reported on both of those realities extensively, and the White House has been extremely upset about it. My next guest, Emmy-winning legend Bob Costas, was an early adopter of this point of view, as he recently recounted with Bill Maher.
When it comes to Biden, this is like the truth that no one until very recently wants to say out loud. But my friends will tell you I've been saying it for 4 years. This is emperor's new clothes stuff. Joe Biden should have run on a firm promise that he would be a one-term president. The only reason he is president is that he's not Donald Trump. Then the Dems could have gotten a lot of people up in the bullpen, and they could have sorted through those people. If Biden's hubris is such that he doesn't understand the best interest of his party and, more important, his country, then he has to be shown the door.
So, is President Biden the Democrats' best chance at beating Donald Trump? I want to know what you think. Go to my website at Smerconish.com. Answer today's poll question. It reads like a puzzle. Which is more accurate? Only Biden can beat Trump, or Trump can only beat Biden? Bob Costas joins me now, 29-time Emmy winner. Bob, thank you for being here. Like the others that I've quoted from, you come at this from a position of not wanting to see Trump get elected. You should state that at the outset. True?
Yes, absolutely. He is by far the most disgraceful figure in modern presidential history. He's only become more disgraceful since 2016 and since 2020. He is a bubbling cauldron of loathsome traits, and it's only those who are actually suffering from Trump derangement syndrome, which is the way they and Fox News and all the rest of MAGA media try to brush aside all the legitimate criticisms of Trump. You have to be in the throes of some sort of toxic delusion, in a toxic cult, to believe that Donald Trump has ever been, in any sense, emotionally, psychologically, intellectually, or ethically fit to be president of the United States. But his supporters are locked in on that. There is no cult of Joe Biden. Just let me finish this thought, Michael. Even if he had not run explicitly with a pledge that he would be a one-term president, even if halfway through this term he had said, look, I've done my job, I have some policy successes, I'll continue to do my job, and now the Democrats can get, as I said before, some people up in the bullpen and sort through it. He had a chance to be seen as a statesman and a patriot. Now his legacy is likely to be that of a man whose hubris prevented him from seizing the moment in an appropriate way, and at best, he can squeak by Trump, that's at best, or he could lose to Trump and subject the nation to 4 more years of this kind of ongoing insanity, or if he squeaks by, it's very likely that he cannot complete his second term. He'd be 86 at the end of it.
Is it possible that you're not giving the incumbent his just due? I'm going to put up on the screen and I'll read aloud so that you know what I'm talking about. Stuart Stevens is a former Republican political consultant, now with the Lincoln Project. Quote, the stock market is hitting record highs. Unemployment is at a record low with 14 million new jobs. Talk to small business owners. The biggest problem they're facing is finding workers. He goes on to talk about infrastructure, prescription drugs, gas prices, and says Joe Biden has assembled a hell of a record. No one's giving him credit for that.
I think he's getting some credit for it, but here's the key. He cannot make that case for himself. He cannot make a clear, cogent, vigorous case for himself, nor can he prosecute the obvious case against Trump in the court of public opinion. Gavin Newsom frequently goes on these programs, like yours, and makes a very articulate and detailed case for President Biden. But all it makes me and millions of others think is Biden is incapable of uttering even 2 consecutive sentences of the 5 perfect paragraphs that Newsom just put together. And I think Nate Silver, you quoted earlier, saying that he's got to get out there and do 4 interviews with unfriendly, or at least down the middle, not softball interviews. But the problem with that is his own staff knows that he has to be bubble wrapped, that he can't do a Super Bowl interview. It's sad to say. Biden is obviously, on balance, a decent man. He's served his country, and no matter what, sane people will vote for him over Trump. But it's a hell of a risk to send this guy out there. Trump is a monster. You shouldn't send this guy out there at this point in his life to try and slay the dragon.
Bob, I know the reaction that you will receive. I'm sure that you've already received from, in a way with candor, expressing yourself. You obviously believe that it's something you have to do, right? I mean, speak to the reaction that you've heard and your willingness to endure the criticism and say these things.
You know, look, most of my career has been in sports. I think fair-minded people who are familiar with it know, however, that I'm reasonably conversant with other topics. But as I said at the top with Bill Maher, this is Emperor's New Clothes stuff. If people aren't familiar with the fairy tale, the emperor was naked, no one wanted to say it, a little child was able to say it. This is common sense stuff. And as a concerned citizen, I feel as if I was on Bill Maher. I didn't know for sure what he'd ask. He asked me the question. I told him what I'd been thinking about for years. I think that resonates with many people. Of course, there are people who say, and this is the card they've been playing for a long time, yeah, we kind of know it's true, but don't say that. That will only help Donald Trump. Well, how feckless are the Democrats? If they realize that this guy could possibly lose to Trump, then get somebody else out there. You don't go into the Super Bowl with a quarterback who has a dead arm, or the 7th game of the World Series if people are more comfortable with me talking in sports terms. You don't do it. This is just so obvious.
I know that I receive criticism by having this type of a conversation, and people will say, you're electing Donald Trump. And my response is to say, no, you're electing Donald Trump if you have a candidate who's not up to the task and you don't think anyone else is noticing. You get the final word, but you've only got 30 seconds.
Well, the final word, I'll remind people what they shouldn't have to be reminded of concerning Trump. What his former chief of staff said, John Kelly. The depth of his dishonesty is astonishing. He is a person who has no idea what America is all about, a person who has nothing but contempt for our democratic institutions, our Constitution, and the rule of law. God help us all. The Trump delusion is not going away on the right, but sane Democrats have to offer a compelling alternative. Biden, for all he has accomplished and for all his basic decency, is not a compelling figure any longer.
Thank you, Bob Costas. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Michael.
What are you thinking? Hit me up on social media. I'll read some responses throughout the course of the program. What do we have, Catherine? Are you a Trump? Right. I mean, there we go. I didn't know that was coming because I never know any of the social media that are coming, but that's exactly what I'm talking about. Kathy Barron doesn't want to hear it. And I guess thinks that the ostrich approach is the way to go because, hey, shh, don't say it. No one will notice. Everyone's noticed, Kathy. And I think that Bob is courageous for his willingness to offer the opinion that he just did in an effort, in his view, to say, hey, wait a minute. You know, ignoring the emperor with no clothes is going to get Donald Trump elected. Is that really what we want to do? Or does this require a rethinking before the convention comes?